Okay, can everybody, we're gonna start the meeting now. Can everybody stand for a pledge of allegiance? Flag is here on the table. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we're gonna skip the stuff I had at the beginning. Actually, but Doogie is actually gonna give us kind of a town manager update. You can get in contact with him and have some stuff to share with us. I'm just gonna this is Judy Barrett from Barrett Consulting. We've spoken many times via Zoom. First time we've got to meet her. So welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming. We really appreciate it. You know, you're busy.
No, this time actually is usually good. The problem is that if I have to be somewhere in a Zoom meeting at 7, which is often the case,
Yeah.
that's the difficulty. It's just getting back to some.
So the 6:38 is perfect time to start meeting.
6:38 is just good.
Okay. All right. Do you want to take it over now? Just okay. All right. Go ahead, Judy.
Yeah, so I'll give you a little bit of information about the schools. And then I want to do what I really have been wanting to do with you guys for about 4 months, which is to get you into this strategic planning process. Because ultimately my job is to help you guys do an action plan. And we need to get beyond the schools in a way, because we don't really know what's going to happen with them. So the last time I spoke with the town manager, he said that he was a little bit reluctant to try to put an RFP out right now because he's not sure he can guarantee water. And if there's no water, then there's not much point in seeking a developer. So the way it stands right now
So
is.
can I just have a question on that?
Sure,
So
sure.
because no water, but aren't we continue to build houses in Abington?
I can only tell you what he said to me.
Okay.
You know, I'm sure that there is continued development. I was just in Rockland a couple of hours ago and had this almost same
I bet,
conversation
yeah.
with the staff there.
Yeah.
So the way it is right now, I mean, I'm certainly prepared to put the RFP, the draft RFP in everybody's hands to review. But I think he doesn't want to make a decision yet because it's not clear that we can get water for those buildings. So that's the procurement process is in some ways the least of the town's problems right now. The water's kind of a biggie. The other issue is the sort of historic status of the schools. And I should tell you, although I am not a preservation planner, I have a passion for preserving historic properties. And what we learned from speaking with developers who might be interested in this, in one or both buildings, is that the only way to really make it viable is if they can qualify for historic tax credits. In addition to low income tax credits. One isn't going to do it. So in order for the properties to qualify for historic tax credits, they will need to be listed on the National Register of Historic Places. And the preservation planner, who I often work with when I consulted with her about this, she said that Mass Historical Commission is sometimes a bit reluctant to sort of jump to put something on the register if there hasn't been kind of an active presence in the community around preservation planning. So I don't know where you are with historic preservation planning, but I can tell you, I don't remember if I had this discussion with you, but I did say it to Scott, that the way to sort of move forward here in terms of being able to position anything for a register nomination is to do a community-wide preservation plan, which a number of communities in Massachusetts have done. It's essentially hiring a preservation consultant to come in and look at what you have in different parts of the community and try to help the town set some priorities around where are the most important protection interests, where are they? So it's identification, it's determining what the best strategy is, and basically laying out a plan for the community to preserve its historic assets. With that plan in place, it now positions Abington in a much stronger way to be able to nominate those buildings for the register and actually get them on it. So that's, I think, a discussion that perhaps the Historical Commission is going to want to have around, you know, do you have an appetite for doing that kind of planning? And I don't want to tell you that the buildings won't be listed. I'm just saying that there are barriers, there are likely to be some barriers in the way, because what MHC, Mass Historical Commission, may ask is, well, are these the most important properties in this town to be registered? What else is important out there that isn't being nominated? And how do you know? That's what the preservation plan helps to answer. So there isn't really a reason to hold up the RFP. If Scott said to me tomorrow, we can give you water. There isn't really a reason to hold up the RFP around the historic issue because there's time. When Bridgewater went through their project to redevelop the McElwain School, that property wasn't on the National Register. The town had a preservation consultant who did the nomination. But Bridgewater had done recently some more inventory work, which is kind of the basis for identifying your historic resources and determining level of risk. So they were in a little different position from Abington, but I say this not knowing how much preservation planning and inventory work has already been done here. So there may be more on record than I'm aware of, but this was sort of what I picked up from the preservation consultant I worked with, who kind of took a look at the state register, looked at this database we call MACRIS, which kind of tells you what the town has indicated is important. And she said that she thought that the town would be in a much better position to get those buildings nominated if you had some kind of preservation plan in place. So that's the story on the schools. There's a water issue and a potential eligibility issue for for historic preservation tax credits. I don't want to say there's an eligibility issue for the National Register because I don't think there is. But I do think there's an issue around MHC's, new Mass Historical, their receptivity to just putting two buildings on the register without knowing what else is in the community that perhaps also needs to be protected. Does that make sense to you? Ken, I know you're on the historical.
No, it does, and we, CPA, Historical Commission, has kind of been going for quite a while. Our list of historic properties in town hasn't been updated for over 30 years.
Right, that's what I thought.
However, we did put in through CPA for funding for 50/50, for the town's share of 50/50 grant we're applying for in November.
The survey and planning grant?
Yes.
Yes.
To update our list. We've been working as 5 members, we each took 1/5 of the list and started, okay, is the building still there? You know, and then looked out and my thought now, to be on the National Historic Register, Abington only has 2 things. They have the depot and they have Island Grove Park. That's all.
Yep.
But ironically, these 2 schools aren't even on the Massachusetts
That's correct.
town list of it. So I would think we will work to get them at least on the town list right away.
Yeah.
We can do that, but we can do that ourselves. You know, without any, at least they'll be on that list.
Yeah.
Because that's what, just for filling out the forms and sending it to the state. So we
Right,
can do
for
that.
MACRIS purposes.
Right, exactly. So at least that will be the start.
Mhm.
So we will do that. And, you know, we're not against, we're trying to get the plan up to date. So I do like that idea about the community-wide preservation plan, you know. So we also have some other plans. We have an office in the library.
Yep.
The shelves haven't been touched for 30 years either, so we don't even know what's on there.
Right.
So we have someone come in, a preservation just come in, give us an estimate of, you know, what's worth it. So that's a different thing altogether. But yeah, I think we'll be more proactive. And one of our priorities will be at least get the 2 schools on the state's list, which is it's not a big deal,
Right,
but at least it's a start.
understood. Yeah, the National Register nomination is a more involved process. There are special forms that have to be completed. There's documentation that needs to be attached. I'm sure you know.
And that's also something that we wouldn't be able to do.
That's
because
correct.
of the time constraints.
Right.
And the time involved to do it, so we would have to hire professionals. to do it.
Right.
But that's
Right.
something that if we ever have preliminary research to get on the macros, then we can, you know, hire someone to get it.
Exactly.
If, you know, if it comes to fruition. I
Right.
can touch really quickly upon the water. There is supposedly a list, how do I explain this? The places that are, my understanding is, I haven't talked to anybody from water, is actually gonna maybe mention someone wants to, like a subcommittee to do that. But if you had a property that was already, you know, on, you know, stubs left, whatever, you, that's why you're in there. But my understanding is the water department sent something out, you guys might know this too, sent everybody that has water being reserved for them, like future developments, saying, Then to the end of the year to either get the development in planning stages or get the development go. So that should free up some water around the first of the year, supposedly. That's what I heard from Liz at one point, this first meeting. So, we can probably send a letter to the water, just asking them, maybe you ask someone from the water to come in, if that's something we want to do. But I would say probably not until we find out. Well, I guess it would be a good step to find out what's going on with water.
I still like to know that, yeah, I would.
We went to a couple of meetings a while back.
Yeah.
And there was some developments, and it's just, they're on a wait list.
Yeah.
Some of the bigger developments, there just wasn't the capacity to give it to them, but if they're on the list, you know, and then they have all these other smaller places, so they were trying to.
Because I actually asked, Scott, before I came down here, I said, well, shouldn't we put those two schools on the list? And he wasn't really sure if there was a list, so to speak, so. Because I mean, they had water at one point,
Yeah.
so that water should, but it's probably not enough for 12 units. Although if there's a school there, if you made, in the kitchen, and maybe, who knows, but. I don't know, well, we should bring the water in, and so,
I'm really curious.
or you can go to one of the meetings, so, yeah.
It's-
Why don't we just come up with some questions we want to ask the water, and then we can either go to a meeting, or they can either answer or come.
Because they're in the afternoon, and Ron and I got to a few before, so.
All right, Judy, thank you for that update. All right,
Game now?
we're ready.
Okay. So we want to help you get a plan pulled together, but there's some work you guys need to do. And what I want to walk you through tonight is just the sort of basic pieces of what a strategic plan is and the language that we use in them. And I'm going to talk quite a bit, and then I'm going to get to a point in this where I'm going to turn it over to you guys, but not yet. So if you can just bear with me a bit, we will get to the point where I can stop yapping and ask you folks some questions. Which you will have, pardon me?
Will we be able to get a copy of that?
Yeah, you know, I feel stupid. I just never got to it today.
Okay.
And I'm embarrassed, but I will send it. So that's a perfectly fair question. So by the time we get to the part in this where I start asking you guys questions, you will have already seen what I'm going to ask you, and I'll let you know when we get there. So the thing that I want to focus on tonight is a mission, vision, and values, because these are the heart of any strategic plan. And I'm going to say, for the purposes of tonight, set the schools aside. Because if you're going to be a housing trust, you can't be a one-issue entity. So you almost have to put them aside and think about longer term, where are you trying to go? Because if you're going to get involved in other kinds of projects, if you're going to be trying to get funding from CPC or other town resources or anybody, you need to have a straight story, and you need to be all saying the same elevator pitch, and you actually need to all believe it. And I think one of the things that you folks may want to do, I'm not sure who you're missing tonight, but I think one of the things you're probably going to want to think about is how do you get maybe a few more people involved. This core group is fine, but typically a trust is a little bit bigger. It's hard to get people interested in an affordable housing trust until you have money and you have a plan. Because once you have those things and you can all talk about this is who we are, then people start to get interested in serving. And this is exactly what happened in Nantucket, where people did not want to be on the trust. Actually, the trust had a bad name. And they went through this planning process and kind of looked at themselves and said, what have we done to sort of contribute to this bad reputation? I'm not saying you have a bad reputation, but they, they went through this process and came out the other side with a plan, and town meeting gave them $22 million. So, but I think it's getting to what are you actually saying about yourselves? So I want to talk about this mission, vision, and values piece, because it really is the heart of a plan. And it is what I would call the first things first, which is why I said set the schools aside tonight. So you need a mission statement, like any organization needs a mission statement. And a mission statement is what you're going to tell people that you do. Now, when you're a brand new housing trust, sometimes it's a little hard to talk about who you are today, when really what you want to talk about is maybe what you're going to be in a couple of years. But that's the value of the vision. The mission right now is, who are you? Why do you exist? What is your reason for being? So you want to think about, what are we doing today? And who are you serving? What are you trying to accomplish? And what's the benefit? And for whom? And when you craft a mission statement, you want it to be tight. It's going to be something everybody can kind of say, without reading from the script. And clear and outcome oriented, so people know what it is that you're doing. If it's sort of this passive statement about yourselves, it doesn't really communicate what you do. So that's kind of what the mission is. The vision's a little different. That's, who do you want to be? And what do you want to be able to tell the world you aspire to be if you have resources from the community or anybody else? What is it that you want to be? So this, unlike the mission, which should be really kind of concrete, this is really more of an aspirational statement. This is like what we would want to be able to say about ourselves. It's sort of like a roadmap of where you think you're going. And you're going to go back to that vision statement when you work on the strategic plan to say, is this going to get us to where we said we want to go? That's why I'm saying these are first things first. So when we craft the vision statement, we're going to be thinking about where do you want to go? What do you want to be moving forward? What do you want to achieve in the future? What kind of future do you envision for Abington, especially in the world of housing? And if you thought about what Abington might be at its very best with housing, how would you describe it? So this is the mission is communicating who you are. The vision is communicating where you're going and why. And the why is really important because that's what makes people decide, are you worth investing in? Are you worth supporting? Do you have a sense of a mission? Is the mission of the group something that people can say is important? And the vision of the group to get to some outcome, is that something that the community can say, that really matters to us, that touches our values as a community? So the values kind of underlie all of this. Value statements are, what are the things that you believe? What are your sort of core principles? What matters to you? And you really need to think through this, what are my values? Because there are times when you're going to need to make a decision. And you may have disagreements. And what you're going to want to do is bring the decision process back to what matters to us. Who are we? What do we do? Where are we trying to go? And if we have competing opportunities, how do we align the choice with what we say is most important to us? So the core values kind of really are intended not only to communicate to the outer world, but really to yourselves. How are we going to make decisions? What's the culture of this group? And how are you going to make decisions going forward? So the value statements, the questions are like, what do you stand for? What things do you value over all else as a housing trust? How are you going to conduct your activities to get to the vision and to be in the mission that you say you are? How do you treat each other as well as people outside the community? And, do the values that you have kind of bring out the best in you? So those are values, and they may seem kind of touchy-feely, but they're really important. So that is really what we're going to focus on tonight, but I want to show you the rest of what this is. And some of this I know I already showed you, but because I couldn't see you, it was so hard to know how much you could see what I was trying to present. So when we do a strategic plan, we typically use what's called a logic model. It's a visual way of representing what a group's mission is, what you're trying to do, what activities you're doing, what resources you need, and what you want the outcomes to be of the resources that you invest. And resources, people typically think it's money, and it often is, but it's not the only resource you need, as you will see as we get into this. So, strategic plan has these pieces, one of which is this idea of the inputs, which I sometimes, it's sort of thinking about what you have to invest in what you're going to do. So your inputs are your resources. It's money, it's personnel, it's volunteers, it's in-kind resources. So You are a resource. The volunteers on this trust are a resource. Liz is a resource. Scott's a resource. There are other boards and commissions in town who need to be a resource for you. And then, anything that you think you're going to be able to take and do something with, which is sort of your talents, right? Activities are the things that you're going to do with those resources. So if somebody gives you $100,000, what are you going to do with it? And how are you going to make the decision? And you're all going to have ideas about how to spend that $100,000, and you may disagree, and that's where you go back to your mission, vision, and values, and you reconcile the differences of opinion. But these are the things that you do, the activities that you actually do, in order to achieve the outcome that you said you wanted, which is your vision. And then outputs are like the tangible results. So I'll just try to break this down for you. Say you have $500,000 to work with, and you want to have a program to help people buy a home in Abington. So you design a program, and you think with $500,000 you can probably assist maybe 6 to 8 borrowers. So the resource is the money, and you as volunteers. The activity is the program, and the output is we helped 5 or 6 people buy a house in Abington. That's the basic architecture of it. But there's more to it than that, because if you're just trying to help people buy a house, the question is toward what end? So there's always going to be some outcome, this higher outcome that you're trying to achieve, which is where the values come in again. So there are outcomes that are short term. It's like the immediate effect, right? Somebody gets a key to buy a house, and they're excited. And intermediate outcomes are things that happen over the longer term because of what you've done. So let's say you help 6 or 7 people buy a house in Abington. And as a result of that activity, people who are existing residents find out that people who buy affordable homes are not scary. And so the community starts to resent affordable housing a little bit less. Because bear in mind, your job as a housing trust is to create housing. So you gotta be thinking about what are we trying to get to here. So the intermediate effect might be people find out that folks who buy an affordable home aren't scary. And then the long-term outcomes, I mean, this is a big one, that I can't answer for you, but I can give you an example of what a long-term outcome would be. That people who may have had housing instability at one point have a home, and as a result of having a stable home, their kids go through school in the Abington schools and become first-generation college students. So that's that sort of lofty, what are we trying to get to? What's the higher purpose here of the trust? And I'm just giving you examples so you can kind of see how this builds on, how these things build on each other. And impact is like the ultimate impact of the plan. So it's the cultural benefits to the community, it's the attitudinal benefits to the community, it's the benefits to the families who are assisted, and it's the longer term. Oh my gosh, not only did we send a first generation college student to college because they had a stable education in Abington, but they come back and they're going to be homeowners, they're going to be invested in the community. That's the kind of thinking that I'm encouraging you to do. So then there's these other things. They're called assumptions and contextual factors. So the whole premise of a logic model is you do something because you think it's going to have an outcome. There's an implicit assumption. If we invest in homeownership assistance, it's actually going to benefit people's lives. The reason it's important to be thinking about what assumptions you make when you design your plan is that things may not work out the way you thought, in which case when you're evaluating how you're doing with the plan, you might want to look back at what you said and make some adjustments because your assumptions were wrong. Now, of course, in a perfect world, your assumptions were absolutely right? So, and then there's this thing of contextual factors, and that's the environment in which you operate. So you have your assumptions, that's what you bring to the table. Like, we help people buy a house, it's going to be a good thing. But then there's like, things that you don't control. It's does the community really care? Does the community value, a mix of people? Does the community value affordable homeownership? Does the community value wanting to have, a population of a variety of different people in it, because that's part of what you're doing, right? You're enabling somebody to buy a home in your community who couldn't have bought one. You're diversifying your town. Well,
Yeah, that's the assumption, yes.
that's your assumption, right? That's the assumption. But then there's this. So you hope that that's what you're going to do, but the contextual factors of these things outside of you that you really don't control, and it may be that not everybody does think it's hunky-dory to be helping people buy a home in Abington. And maybe you don't really get to convince the community otherwise, but you've helped 5 people. Do you know what I mean? So there's always, when we're writing the plan, we want to be thinking about, I'm going to be asking you, well, why, when we get to outputs and so forth, why do you think that? And then the contextual factor question when you're putting the plan together is, who would oppose you? And who would support you? So when we put this plan together, this is not a very pretty chart, but it's essentially what it is. Read it from left to right, like that's how we're taught to read in this country. So the inputs are, what resources do we expect to have? Because you really do have to sort of think about this a little bit in future tense, obviously. It's because you're brand new. But what do we expect we're going to have? So you have to start thinking about budgeting in a way. So when you go to the CPC and the finance committee, whoever, you can say, well, we need this money because, and we've actually done a budget for a couple of years. So what are you going to do with those resources? What will be the measurable results, the 5 or 6 people who buy a home? And then those activities are aligned with your mission, which you said you are, as a housing trust, and the outputs ought to support your vision of yourself perhaps being, this potent leader of affordable housing support in Abington. So the vision is achieved. But then, and all of that is anchored in the values, which is why we're going to get to the values activity tonight. But underneath it all, you're constantly going to be thinking about what did we assume is going to happen, and what were these contextual factors that either were in our aligned with us or not. But it becomes a chart that's prettier than this. But the format is the same. That's what it looks like. So one way to think about getting going on this is to have this sentence with blanks, If we have X and Y, then we can do this and that, which will result in whatever. And so I just take that sentence and say, so if we have resources, we can do these activities. And these activities can do a couple of things, which will result in these outputs that we're trying to achieve and the outcomes that we expect to have, which will help to achieve our vision of housing in Abington. So every single year, you're going to want to look back at what did you do? And what helped you perhaps implement the activities you wanted to do, and what got in the way. So you always with any plan, towns are terrible at this, but I'm not going to let you guys be terrible at this, is you got to think about, well, how did it go? We said we were going to do these things. Did it turn out the way we thought? Are we actually having the results we wanted? That's not something you can do in year one. It's kind of down the road, but it's something you want to keep in mind. Are we using our resources efficiently? Now, I got to tell you, some housing trusts don't pay too much attention to efficiency because they have so little money to work with that you just do what you can with it. But then there's this other thing of causal attribution, which means, so this outcome happened. Was it really because of our program or something else? And you may not know the answer to that, but it's a good question to ask. Because you're basing this all on assumptions that something's going to change as a result of what you're doing, just be alive to the possibility that something turned out the way you wanted it to, but it wasn't because of you. So just some things from other housing trusts, and I mentioned this a little bit before, but I just wanted to review this too, because I think it's important. First year activities, housing trusts are not doing school redevelopment, I hate to tell you. I mean, that's just not what they do, because they don't have the resources yet. It's a dream, it's a great idea. It's something you're gonna work toward, you wanna have it in your plan, but it's not the thing you do in year one. Year one is, people need to know who the heck you are. They need to know who you are, what you're doing, why you exist, and that you're not gonna do scary things to your town. No. So there's a lot of just technical assistance and training stuff that goes on, which is why I'm here to help you. There are also ways that housing trusts are connecting with other housing trusts around the state. So in June, Massachusetts Housing Partnership had their annual Housing Institute out at Devon's. One day was remote, one day was in person. They know that not everybody can drive out to Devon's. Do you guys all know where Devon's is?
Yeah.
Okay. You'd be amazed when I ask that question, people don't know.
Yeah.
But the whole first day was remote. That's an opportunity for people to learn what's going on and to hear from other housing trusts because they're at that meeting. And that whole thing has been recorded. So it is now on MHP's website. And I would say that's an example of a resource that's free to you. And then just learning the laws. Like, I've been dealing with 40B for, 28, 29 years. And there's so much misinformation out there about 40B. It makes my head hurt. But it is important to understand, how it does work. And it's not the only game in town. But understanding how affordable housing gets built, it's not easy, no matter what anybody tells you. I can absolutely assure you that if any developer could figure out a way to build what he or she wants to build without going through 40B, they would much rather do it. Because 40B is torturous. It's torturous for the town, it's torturous for the developer. So just getting up to speed about how all this works, that's a year one, that's our mission is to be, the most well-educated housing trust in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and to be a leader as a result. Boom. I'm making this up, but and then just building partnerships. So one of the things I'd like to suggest as we go through this process is we should probably dedicate a meeting or two, part of a meeting or two, just to meet with some nonprofit developers. I don't know who you've actually spoken with, but these are the people who are most likely going to help you with a project like the schools. They're not the only ones who do those kind of projects, but because they are mission-driven, what we call mission-driven developers, they tend to be the ones who take difficult properties and turn them into affordable housing assets. Nobody knows you exist. I can absolutely guarantee you. Nobody knows you exist. So getting to know these groups so that when you put an RFP out on the street, they know you mean business. Towns put out RFPs all the time and have, they don't know what they're doing, right? So I'm not saying you don't know what you're doing, but developers will look at this and they'll say, does this town understand what it's getting into or not? So building up lines of communication with some of these nonprofits, which we do have in our region, would be a good thing to do. Building partnerships. That's a resource to you. Back in that resources column. For-profit developers, and I know everybody hates for-profit developers, but every time I talk to one of them, I learn something. I'm not a developer, so there's a lot I don't know, but I learned from these guys. Interfaith groups. I don't know what the situation is in Abington. I don't know how many churches you have here. I don't know if you have an interfaith council. Some towns do. But it's a good idea to talk to the clergy or the boards that, different churches have different governing bodies, but vestry or whomever, just because they know where the needs are in the town. I can absolutely guarantee you they know what the needs are. And it's important for a housing trust to know where the needs are because you may not really know. So building those relationships. A lot of that first year stuff is just building relationships. And it may seem like, oh my God, I want to get bricks and mortar done, but you're not ready to do that yet. What you really want to do is, when you get to that point, to be able to do it well. Building rapport with other town boards and committees. I mean, one of the things I'd love to help you guys do is put together a presentation, kind of like this, and go around the selectmen, go to the planning board, go to whomever, and say, we are here, and this is what we're doing. Got any questions? You know, they need to see you. And if you meet with the select board, the community will see you, because those meetings are broadcast. Talking to housing trusts nearby. Like, I haven't really done much of an inventory yet. I'm embarrassed to tell you, I'm not sure how active the housing trusts are right around you. But it would be a darn good idea to find out, and I will try to do that for you. But just talking to them, like, invite them to a meeting. Or invite the chair, just invite somebody to come to a meeting and talk to you about what they're doing. There is an effort afoot in Massachusetts to have almost like a consortium. We have housing trusts that have put money into, say, a first-time home buyer loan. And they have no idea when that house turns over, whether it was actually sold to someone who was income eligible. Because they're all volunteers and they just don't have the capacity to be doing this stuff. So the current thinking is that it's a good idea for housing trusts to get together on like a regional basis. Everybody pools some money, they're all gonna pull it from CPC, but hire someone to help the housing trusts in a given region. So the Metro West Group 2 area has a very successful regional housing services office. My firm was actually hired by Barnstable County to help them set theirs up. We're actually just starting that now. But little towns all over Barnstable County, first-time homebuyer loans, they don't know what the status of it is. They don't know the status of their rental projects, and they don't have the capacity to do it. So I'm not saying this is something to jump on now, but it's something I think you're going to want to think about. At the very least, knowing what the needs of the other housing trusts are, because maybe you're going to find out you all have some need in common. And then talking to some of the banks, just to understand how their programs work. The fact is, there's a lot of this I can just tell you, but if I do that, you're not building those relationships. So I'd rather help you set up the lines of communication with some of these folks so that you have a relationship with them and they will know who you are. A lot of public education, some housing trusts have done videos, like just short interviews with people who, people who live in the community, town officials, perhaps folks who bought an affordable home or live in a habitat house or something like that. Just to have an educational video available that people can see on the website anytime they want to see it. Showing at a select board meeting, which forces people to see it. Having a short brochure about who you are, which you can't do until you kind of do the strategic plan, but having just something, this is who we are, right? This is what we do. Having a website or a page on the town website. I don't know how much you guys actually have on there right now, but there should be a page about the housing trust. Like, find it from the homepage. Who's the housing trust? What do we do? What are we working on? And then working on that first year of developing a budget. Because it's kind of hard to go to CPC and ask for money when you don't really know what you're going to do with it. So I'm about to flip this into a conversation with you, and I did not try to bring the big sheets tonight to write on, because if I did that, I wouldn't be able to do this. So I'm going to take some notes while you guys talk, and you'll have a chance to tell me later whether I actually heard you correctly. But this is going to be your time to talk. Get this over. Where are you? There you are. Okay. So those are my questions for you. What are you doing today as a fairly young housing trust? Who are you seeking to serve? What are you trying to accomplish? And what's the benefit for whom? Those are questions for you.
Good answer, sweating. Really hot here. It's flooding today. I'm actually gonna go get some water.
Yeah.
There's water right next to the wall, so. What are we doing today?
Yeah.
I think it's weird. I thought we were lost when we first started. And then we had a Zoom call with you and I was like, okay, I think we kind of have a little bit of a direction. But I don't feel any better today than I did then. And I feel like, I don't know how to say this without pissing anybody off, but I thought we got thrown out of the bus with this whole Glenwood property, you know. There was property up here that, Habitat was interested in, and the town manager was leading the charge, and then the selectmen decided, no, we're gonna keep it for recreational use after, we did a lot of work to get the ball rolling.
Yeah,
So I just thought, it kind of set us back a little bit, you know. I don't know what you guys think about, but
it was a town-owned site that Habitat was interested in.
yes.
Which had been approved for condos already years ago.
So why did the selectmen decide to keep it for recreation?
Probably because we moved too fast and didn't explain, you talk about, it's a real thing.
Yeah.
People are scared about, oh, it's affordable housing, I don't want it in my backyard, you know?
Yeah.
I think that,
I think because part of it is we didn't have their full-on support. I feel like they are, a lot of the times they're looking to please other groups, and like anything to do with schools and things like that, and I don't think the support is there as much.
Right.
Maybe that's changed a little bit.
I think the town manager's a very big proponent for affordable housing. He has a record of it in his other towns.
Yep.
But I think that he put the cart before the horse, and
Yeah.
he didn't talk to the selectmen ahead of time, and then all of a sudden, we kind of get blown out of it. I was embarrassed,
Yeah.
you know?
yes, it was
We tried to keep a
yeah.
nice face, but,
Because it had been stated that they had already discussed recreational space there a couple of years ago. And there were plans already in place that they had planned out for the space. So when we went to the meeting, it was like, all of the different recreational, the people got up and said, no, we want
Well, this
this and we
is something that
want
was,
that, and we want
we
this.
didn't bring this forward. The town manager brought it forward to
Right,
us,
exactly.
you know?
Right.
We were
So-
just there to support the Habitat project, and it was like, whoa, wait a minute, that's gonna be recreational space, that's gonna be a hockey rink and pickleball courts, and it was like, whoa.
So one of the reasons you need a better relationship with the select board is so that you don't get caught in that situation again.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So think about these questions,
Yeah.
because I'm not gonna
Because
fill in the blanks for you.
I was surprised though that the town manager wasn't aware that that's what was going on,
I feel like when things were sort of just sitting, and then when word got out that Habitat was interested, that's when the ball started rolling again.
Yeah.
You mean the push for the recreation space?
Exactly.
Yeah. So those kind of things happen. I mean, they do, and this is not the only town where that sort of thing is taking place.
Yeah.
It's why there needs to be a better line of communication directly with the select board or somebody on it, and I don't know. Some towns have a select board member like as a liaison. Do you have a liaison?
Yeah.
She's at the selectmen's meeting. She just
Yeah.
got elected.
Because it was the same time, yeah.
Okay, all right.
So we did.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Fine, thanks. So, you gotta answer the questions, because I can't write mission, vision, values if you don't answer them. What are you trying to accomplish? What are you trying to serve?
We had a mission statement.
What anyway?
I got some self.
I don't know the answer to these
Yeah.
questions.
I mean, Kenny, didn't we developed part of this?
We have a mission statement, but now it scares me because,
I'm all right, but I usually got my
Okay.
iced coffee,
I
but
saw
I
that.
went to Mary Lou's and got.
Very smart. See, we have a mission statement, but it was crafted before we did anything. And it's long and winded, and I think we tried to touch on every single thing that we wanted to accomplish, and we didn't know what we wanted to accomplish. Well, we thought we knew what we wanted to accomplish. I have it somewhere, but it's long-winded, so.
So, set that aside for a minute. and answer these questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Might be like a teacher, right? You know, answer these questions. Who do you want to serve? What are you trying to accomplish? And what's the benefit?
Well, personally, I think we're serving the town. You know what I mean? We're serving for the town, we're townsfolk. We're serving, who do we seek to serve? We serve, serving the town. I would hope that the town would want more affordable housing here, you know? For several reasons. I mean, the main reason is, you know, to get up to the 10%. But there's also the waiting list for affordable.
Okay, so I'm gonna push back. Is that the main reason?
It is for some people on the committee.
Okay.
You know, I think we have a lot of different visions. I mean, my biggest concern is affordable housing for seniors, because the list, I want to serve people, I'm a townie.
Yeah.
People that want to stay in town and can't afford it, you know, whether they're young or old. That's who I think, one of the main groups of people we should serve.
I
Okay,
totally agree.
that is a more impressive statement than we serve the town.
I think,
Because now we've got actual people, there's a public benefit. That's the connection I'm trying
right,
to help you make here.
and I think even to clarify a little more on that, one of the biggest concerns is the affordable senior housing,
Yeah.
as well as first-time home buyers and.
Well, you know, I have kids that are gonna be looking for houses. I know they're not gonna be able to live anywhere near me.
Oh, yeah.
You know, my daughter lives in Whitman because it's a little more affordable. Your kids, you know,
Yeah.
your daughter, you know,
I got 2 daughters at home that can't move out.
Yeah.
so it's both ends of the spectrum. It's also people that, you know, could be divorced and don't have the funds anymore and have kids and are
Well, when you
struggling.
retire, you're on a fixed income, you
Yeah.
wanna
Yeah.
stay in town,
Yes,
you can't
exactly.
afford it, and then you go
Right.
and try to get into elderly housing, and it's 6 years.
It's 10.
Yeah, it's 10.
One of the things we have found, working for some other communities where we were helping them monitor their rental units, apartment developments, is that one of the biggest draws to those developments, both the affordable units and the market units, are divorced parents. And they're trying to stay in the community with their kids.
The kids are having schools, they want to stay.
That's right. So there are these other needs, and people like freak out about, oh, we're gonna have more kids in the school. Well, the kids are already in your schools. But I mean, this is important because yes, you serve the town. Anybody in a town government role is serving the town.
But when
But
I,
that doesn't impress.
right, but when I say serve the town, I mean the people in town that want
Yeah.
to stay in town. That's
That's
the
right.
way I look at it.
Right, but that's what I'm
More
trying to
than
get
that,
at, is like the people who are trying to stay here.
Yes. What do you think our grade so far is, you know, how we doing on
So funny.
No.
So the thing is, you know, and that's important to help people who are here who are about to get priced out. That's,
Yeah.
I think a lot of housing trusts care about that. But your townie, did you all grow up here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, you definitely need some other people on this group. Because, well, and I'm not being flip with you. I totally respect that you care about this town. I don't blame you. But I think it helps to have a more of a mix of perspectives, because there are people who've moved into this town who probably love this place as much as you do.
Yeah.
Who may have a different view about what the needs are. That's just a comment.
No, it's actually a very valid point, because we've grown up and we've seen how it changed through the years.
Right.
People that moved here 5 or 6 years ago, you know, may like it for different reasons.
Right.
You know,
Right.
but now we are a 5-member board. So, we can get people to help, right? Well,
You're limited to
Can you
5?
I think-
expand the board? Can you expand it?
I thought it was like a home rule petition or something.
Oh, it might have to be.
I think it went to town meeting, because it vote to form.
Wow, that's a very small housing trust.
And I'm pretty sure,
I'll look into that.
yeah, I'm pretty sure we're a 5-member board. I would have no qualms expanding it at all, you know?
Yeah, that's a really small housing trust.
I would check on that, so.
Yeah.
We can change it.
We would get associate members, then that's not fair to the other people.
So you're trying to help people who are getting priced out of Abbott. I think I heard that correctly. What are you trying to do for them? You're not a bank, you're not a developer, although the housing trust do develop housing, but, I mean, what are you trying to do for them?
I'm trying to find a solution for them to stay within the town. I would say, from my perspective, I am really about trying to get more elderly housing. Just because I've been on the housing authority for a number of years, like Ellen, and it makes me sad when I sometimes think about that list, or I see that, people that don't want to leave Abington, that's where their friends are, especially as you get older. You wanna be able to, I think that's a big part of it, but the problem is I feel as though there's many people that don't think about the elderly population because they're not there. You know what I mean? I guess I've seen it so much because I've worked with them for so many years.
So that's your perspective, because you
That's
work
my
with them.
perspective,
Right.
yes, yeah, definitely my perspective. So I see why you say broaden the board
Yeah,
for that,
yeah, and I
get
mean,
that.
I'm about to be 70 years old, so like, I get it.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah,
I'm not anti-senior.
yeah,
But I also know that to get anything done, the scope of your work is gonna have to go beyond
Yeah.
seniors, or you
Yeah.
won't, it's just, I'll just give you a direct, I don't know how else to say it. The state perspective is that communities just don't want kids, and that the only thing communities care about is old people. So that there's no kids in the school. That's the state perspective, and I hear it all the time.
they don't do anything to help.
I hear it all the time, that people just don't want kids in the schools. So that becomes the basis for supporting senior housing. I'm not saying that's what you're doing, but I'm trying to alert you to how that messaging comes across.
Yeah.
And that's why you need to be thinking about, who are we trying to serve here? That really the senior population in Abington may be your first passion, but it can't be your only one.
Yeah.
The woman that you had do the center school survey.
Yeah.
She was very succinct when she talked in that Zoom meeting with all the different groups.
Yep.
Of what affordable housing is.
Yep.
She did a great job. I
Yeah,
think she
she's
lost it in you, but I mean, she did a great job, and she kind of put it like it could be the guy that's fixing your car.
Mhm.
He's divorced, he has kids, or
Right.
his wife can't work. It's not just the seniors. It's not just the young kids. It's everyone. It's
Yeah.
everyone that can't afford a home.
Right.
Can we help everyone that can't afford a home? No.
Right,
But we can help as many as we possibly can.
right.
You know.
And then the question becomes, so you have, the resources are finite. So how do you set priorities? Which you don't have to do right now. I'm just saying that that's sort of the choice point you end up at is, there are lots of different groups that need help.
And I think a way to put it too is like if you're trying, like you said, go around, talk to the boards, and you just take specifics, like the lowest cost house in Abington is $500,000. Somebody's 25 years old, use like the facts from it, the rate, the mortgage rates and this, that, how do they do it?
And that's an example, that is an activity I would like to see in this plan, is for your group to go and meet with a few other boards.
Yeah.
I'm happy to help you put that presentation together. We can get that data for you, we have it.
Yeah.
But I can't speak for you. I mean,
Yeah.
they need to see your face.
We definitely should, meet with the planning board and the zoning board and the selectmen.
Right.
And just the senior housing, the seniors somehow, the housing authority and that sort of stuff.
Yes, right.
Well, we did have a meeting with, the housing authority
Right.
a year ago.
And then we were
Yeah,
talking
another-
with like other relationships and stuff, like I used to do mortgage underwriting and,
Uh-huh.
some of the banks have the first time home buyer programs.
Yes.
And, people can buy down their rates sometimes.
Yeah.
They can't, if the rates are up, then that might be something that, you might be able to contribute towards buying down the rate for somebody so that they can afford.
So there are towns that have used CPA funds to set up a pool to write down the interest rate
Mhm.
on the already low interest loan from one mortgage at MHP. So now you've got so that's already an affordable tool. Now, if you buy that interest rate down even more, you've increased the possibility that somebody, who's at 70% of median income or something, can actually buy a house. That is the other thing too that I think people don't understand is what's happened with the income limits. People are shocked when I do presentations and they see the so-called the family of four, the mythical
Yeah.
family of four in the Boston area. I mean, it is.
Yeah.
It's striking. And I mean, I'm just speaking for myself now. I'm not saying you have to adopt this perspective, but the people who are the most poorly housed actually are individuals who are not seniors because no one wants to provide housing for them. So you go in a coffee shop, you buy coffee, who's waiting on you? Who's checking out your groceries? I mean,
Yeah.
those are things that people I think just don't always think about, but they're part of your community, they serve you.
And I
So
wasn't
just-
too proud to ask for help,
Yeah, or they've had the door slammed in their face too many times.
But that comes back around to like the relationships with
Yeah,
the banks, because if somebody goes to an institution and they're like, well, are there programs available, then it's an opportunity to say, well, Abington has a housing trust that.
do you know, I'm sorry, go ahead.
If we do a program like, any of these buy downs or first time home, we have to go through like, a lottery or some kind of process, right? We can't just say, we have to somehow open it up and, we get to be legal, right? Or,
So there are, you have to have a lottery when you're have more units to sell.
Yeah.
Or units to rent. You have to have a fair way to say, we have this program that we're providing some financial assistance to, Citizens Bank. I'm just making up a story here. You have to make that program known. You have to provide an opportunity for people to apply. But ultimately, the ground rules are such that it really becomes people who are going to Citizens, they're pre-qualified for a mortgage. They just need some additional help to afford a house in this town. You have to have a way to say, we didn't just give it to our kids.
Right.
Abington Bank does have a first-time home buyers program.
They do.
and they worked with us like on the sewer commission, they gave low-cost loans for sewer hookups.
Yeah,
So they did work with us, because they're the hometown bank, so
right.
that's not, the relationship there is not a problem, but.
Well, that's good. That's good. They may actually be an MHB lender, I'm not sure, but, so, before I move away from this, what do you see as the benefit of what you do?
Give people a stable environment.
Keep people in Abington that wanna stay in Abington. And you don't wanna hear it, but, and also get to our 10%. I'm sorry, that is it, that's not our major benefit, but that is hopefully the outcome.
And I don't mean to dismiss that, Ken, I know it's important.
Yeah.
I think the challenge for any housing trust is, at some point, the town gets to 10%. Now we
You keep your work, you're not done.
Right, right. But sometimes what you can do then is focus more on a particular aspect of need
Yep.
than you could do when you were at the mercy of a developer who wanted to give it to you now.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So let me just go on here. So the vision, where are you trying to go? What do you want to achieve? And what kind of future do you envision for this community?
Are you asking us?
Yes.
Where are we going moving forward?
You're gonna move forward from here. Where do you want to go?
I think we should develop a budget, I think we should work, I think our most important is to get our mission statement accomplished so that we can present it easily when we meet with other groups in town.
Right, that's a step.
Yeah.
I'm talking about for your organization, what do you want to be able to say about yourselves? And let's just say 5 years. What do you want to be able to say about yourselves?
We made
Because that's the vision.
people's lives.
That we help people get into homes.
We hope what?
People get into homes.
We're staying there.
Or staying, yes.
Yeah. That's right. Be efficient.
What else?
Shut the windows. Suzanne, come on in, hang out with us.
Sorry,
Really,
I'm sorry to interrupt you guys.
Like, this is Suzanne, she's
Hi, Suzanne.
she's our newest select person, but she's also selecting representative for this board.
Right,
This is the first time we've met her.
okay.
There's no screen on that window, that's why all the mosquitoes.
This is the first time you met me?
We're in the middle of talking about mission, vision, and values,
Okay.
strategic plan. So you wanna help people, you wanna help people provide more stability in their housing, you wanna help people get a home, stay at home. But to do that, you have to have, what do you have to have in order to be able to do those things?
Resources.
Okay, what resources?
Money,
Okay,
connections,
what?
connections or relationships with groups and.
So if you have, this is hypothetical, this is not about the board of selectmen or select board. If you have a select board that isn't interested in affordable housing, what do you have to do to bring them along?
Vote them out.
No. Well, I'm sorry.
I can say that because Suzanne is she.
I ran the Abington Senior Center
I
for
see.
years,
Yeah.
so
She
I'm,
knows.
yeah. I'm in.
The reason I'm asking this question is that to get to this point where you're helping people, there's other things you're gonna have to be able to do.
We would have to meet with them and find out why they're not supporting us.
Well, no,
No?
not first. First you meet with them, present what we want to do, how we envision, what we think is,
Right.
the town needs, and get their input,
Right, but she
you know?
was saying.
But then,
what do
if
you-
they say no, then we vote them out.
No, I think you need to start conversations.
Yeah, well, absolutely. It's not always getting the low hanging fruit, like, oh, there's a piece of property here, let's develop it. It's working relationships and working with the town boards, just, to let them know our plans ahead of time to say, hopefully you'll support us.
Would you like to be able to say that you can go to town meeting and get a reasonable allocation of funding every single year? In order to do what you want to do. I'm putting a little words in your mouth, but there's a reason for this.
Well, we've done pretty good getting funds, considering we haven't done anything with them. But yes, I would like to have I talk about the meetings, and I say, hey, they're supposed to give us at least 10%. They can give us up to, was it Cambridge gets like not 80% of the CPA and 90% of the, they don't have to just give us 10%, so we should be searching for at least a third, our budget, so we know what we're gonna get.
Yeah, and I mean, as a brand new housing trust, the last thing you want to do is give the impression that somehow you're competing against history and open space. But I think that's why we have to have the plan, right? But I think that really getting to that point where you can go to a town meeting and not be laughed at and not have people hiss at you, and actually get pretty much what you're asking for, is a place that's different from what it is today.
Yep.
Is it not?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. What kind of community is that?
Probably the one next door, that's Abington. No. I don't understand what you mean.
Community that will readily support a housing trust request for funding,
They
or
have,
for property, or for anything.
they have to be a supportive community, one that aligns with what our goal is, our mission statement is.
Right. And I'm trying to say, what do you think you need to do to get there?
Me
What-
too.
You have to do more than meet with them once.
We said, I don't know, just kidding.
Educate them.
Educate them.
Yeah. And I'm actually, there's a bigger question here, and it really
You
is,
can ask it if you want.
how are you moving the community forward so that it is better aligned with what you're trying to do? That's good. What kind of community is this that will support the housing trust?
Maybe I'm lost, but.
Yeah.
Okay, just because I came in the middle of the meeting and stuff. But if I was to try to get a community to to support, housing for, anyone, I would really look for the seniors. I would put something together, I would have a coffee hour with them and ask them, like, this is what our plans are, and what are your thoughts about it, and how do you feel about it? Because that's the biggest community that's going to vote, that's the biggest community that's going to be supportive of something like this.
And I agree that that needs to happen. What you were, it's just, we had a discussion, no, it's perfectly fine. You have to be careful about giving the impression, internally or externally, that your sole focus is the elderly, because you won't get funding from other sources.
Right, but I don't think that if you have it with the elderly and you start, and this is just my opinion,
Sure.
and there's a lot of elderly that they're not old. They're not old. They're in, their 60s, they're taking care of their grandchildren. At this point, it's kind of like evolved a little bit more. We're not talking about 90-year-olds trying to get out of their house because they can't afford the taxes anymore. We're actually talking about, their early 60-year-olds who were like, little struggle because, there wasn't any pensions when they were coming up. And they're still kind of taking care of their family. And that's what I would target a little bit. And then, younger moms, I mean, I would not open it just to seniors. I would open it to a lot of people who want to support and talk about it.
Right. Okay,
My opinion only.
that's okay.
But I think before we do that, I think absolutely, before that, we have to get the powers that be, the boards in town on our side, to know what we do. And then that will come a lot better, a lot clearer, further down the road.
Okay. Anybody else have anything you want to add to this? Oops. What do you think you stand for? What do you value the most? How are you going to conduct yourselves to achieve your mission and your vision? How do you treat each other? And in terms of your activities and engagements with each other, do you think you bring out the best in all of you?
Well, we stand for affordable housing,
Okay.
right? I mean, for all.
Okay.
What behaviors do we value over all else?
Being fair.
Because if we come out and say, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, I can't believe the distant relative got a first home buyers, or, what about the other people in town, But if we're fair, across the board, we don't want to shoot ourselves in the foot. How will we conduct our activities to achieve our mission and vision? Well, there's so much of this hidden backroom dealings. We should, everything above board, all of our meetings are broadcast on TV. And if we have an audience before the selectmen, I would love to have a meeting, just a selectmen, all those boards, just not on their regular agenda, just a meeting about affordable housing.
Yeah.
That we conduct our activities so everybody knows, right, all our cards on the table, this is what we want to do. We could have some public hearings too, say, what would you like to see for affordable housing?
Well, one of the groups that I worked with in another town did a housing summit. And they basically ran through the same kind of questions
Yeah, and
with the select board, the planning board.
And the seniors are gonna come out for that. But there's also people, I like the idea of asking one of the Habitat for Humanity families, would you be willing to just come in and just say how it's affected you?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people don't, because you think, oh, I don't want one of those houses next to me. These are people, Bob McKinnon is a pastor at our church, it just.
Yeah, a lot of times people don't want to do that.
Right.
Because then they get stigmatized.
No.
But, I think that sort of summit concept would make sense. While you're inviting the seniors, you might want to ask the schools if they can send somebody from the guidance department. I think there's stuff you may not know that you won't find out unless you ask.
Yep.
But that would be a good way to sort of think about launching this. I mean, actually, if you sort of can land on your core mission, vision, values statements, and then have a housing summit meeting with people. This question about how do you treat each other and so forth. What are you going to do if you have your housing summit and somebody gets up and says, in not very nice language, you're just bringing the wrong people into town, and that's
Well, we
going to
have to,
ruin our town.
no, we have to have all our facts and, and show, just like that woman that you worked with, she painted a picture.
Yeah.
That she had it written out, and she explained it, that,
Yeah.
It's not, it's the person who's next door to you right now, we're not talking about, and you brought up a good point about, these divorced people and that have kids, well, the kids are already here, you're not bringing extra kids into town, And, your first grade teacher has to move out of Abington because she can't afford it anymore.
So the reason I'm bringing this up is just there are always going to be people who won't care about facts. So you need to sort of be thinking about how you as a group want to deal with it. Because there are some people who are not persuaded by facts. That's the reason I have that question here. But this is really about these are sort of like one of your guideposts for how you make decisions, how you conduct yourselves, and how you want people outside this trust to see you.
We're the admission committee.
Yeah.
From the beginning, and we all have reasons for being here, because we want. And I think we all uniformly want to have affordable housing. We're not developers, and sometimes it said you should have developers in your committee. Well, no, I don't know if that's true or not. Maybe we should have one that knows what's going on.
Yeah, you should.
But we have a vision, and it's not all for seniors,
I mean, the value of having a developer on a housing trust is, do you know how to develop real estate? I suspect none of you do. I mean, so how do you find out? People have these myths. Number one myth is developers just make a killing on a 40B. It's not true. Developers, developers are just in it for the money. Well, a lot of them are. But what about the mission-driven developers, the nonprofits? They're not in it for the money. They're in for some higher good. When NeighborWorks goes to a meeting and tells you who they are, there's a sense of a higher purpose than we're just here to ask you for money. When the community development corporations in Boston go out and try to raise money, there's this expectation that they're doing some social good. And I think what I'm trying to encourage you guys to do is to think about what's that statement that you're going to make? What is that sort of higher social good? Because people who are going to support you or fund you or whatever are not interested in you're just trying to serve your seniors or you're just trying to help people in Abington. There's some sense of a bigger good involved. And that's what I think you need to be thinking about.
Yeah, I don't think we just think enough. People should have a roof over their heads, and we don't think enough about that. We just think about, they already have a roof over their heads, let's make sure they keep it, but there's some people who don't have that.
Right. So these are questions I want you to just think about. What do you stand for? Somebody asks you, what do you value over all else? Do you feel proud of what you're doing?
Not yet. Go ahead, lady, say something.
Yeah, you guys are being very quiet over there.
Are you proud of what you're doing right now?
I'm proud, but I'm discouraged,
And why are you discouraged?
because it was a year ago that we did the center school presentation,
Right.
and here we are, nothing's changed.
And we know you're gonna say, but that was something that we had just thought, well, this is gonna be pretty cool,
Absolutely. And you're not the only housing trust that sort of had a possibility of doing something that was concrete and that you could build on.
Yeah.
But those projects so often blow up. I mean, the housing trust, the equivalent of a housing trust, they call themselves something different, but in Acton, they had a great project in mind for a school. It was a school, right? Got all set, ready to go. They were going to retain ownership of the land and they do a ground lease. And they had a whole budget, they thought everything was fine, and then the Attorney General's office said, well, wait a minute, you gotta pay prevailing wages. And it blew the budget and it stalled that project for a good 5 years. So people take on these really cool projects without necessarily knowing what's involved. That's why I'm saying having a developer, somebody who, or a builder, I mean, just somebody who knows the industry is very helpful.
What else? What other questions you got for us?
Have you answered these questions enough, do you think?
How do we treat members of our own organization, our community?
Yeah.
I don't know, I don't think I do a good enough job as chairman because I kind of late in.
Everybody's got a job.
No, I know it's tough, I'm not retired, but.
We're involved in a lot of things.
Yeah.
All of us.
So,
Yeah, what other things are you guys involved with in the community? That would be a helpful thing to know. What else
There's
do you-
no housing authority,
Yeah.
just work on.
How about you guys? What else are you involved with?
The church. A lot of the church. I'm on the housing authority, I'm on the council and aging board.
Yeah.
And this,
And what else do you do?
oh, I work full-time and, a couple boards here in town.
What else aside from the historical commission are you on?
Abington celebrates, there's a big fireworks back in town on Monday, what else am I on?
concert,
The Lions Club,
concerts.
Concerts Committee, some of the Concerts Committee, couple of groups, so.
Okay. Aside from the select board, what else are you involved with here?
The selectmen, I'm actually on Park and Rec, and I'm on the, Abington Elderly Services
Yeah.
Committee.
Yeah.
And I work full-time.
I understand. Yeah, I wasn't expecting everybody to have this big long time. I mean, I have one board I serve on in my town, but I can barely keep up with it, so I totally understand. So, you guys are gonna need to continue to think about these questions, because you need to be able to make a statement that stands for something important and bigger than yourselves, to bring people along with you. So, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna write up some notes, and you're gonna do some homework, and we're all gonna get back together again. The next time, I just put 8/21 up here because that is a date that I know I'm available and happens to be a Monday night. We can talk about the date. But I want you guys to, I'm gonna send you some notes on what I think I heard about the mission, vision, values.
Okay.
And I want you to take a look at it. And by the 11th of August, I want you to do two things. I want you to give me some comments on the mission, vision, values. I can't talk straight. And I want each of you to come up with 5 of those if-then statements. So when I send you the PowerPoint, you'll be refreshed as to what that construction looks like.
Yeah.
So when we get back together again in August, we can review the mission, vision, values, which you will have had a chance to think more about.
Yeah.
Because you're gonna read my stuff and say, this woman is nuts, she didn't hear us. But then also, look at those if-then statements, because we need to think about, why did you say those things? If we had this and this, we could do that, and then what? Why did you think those things? And how achievable are they? And it's kind of from that we're gonna start, that we'll be building this plan. But I want you to have to think about when you go to the finance committee. Do you call it a finance committee or an advisory board here?
There is a finance committee, but we probably wouldn't deal much with them.
If you're going for CPC funding, they don't get involved?
We go to CPC first, yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
You're gonna make a pitch, right? So
Oh, yeah.
what are you gonna say?
I'm gonna say, if you give us this money, then we will.
Do this.
But I mean, it's like, what is the persuasive statement, so,
Yeah, no, we're recentering ourselves.
Yeah.
And coming up with a better mission statement. And, discussing our values and have them all out in the open that we should agree upon. You know, that sort of stuff, and let people know, this is what we wanna do with the money that we get, and this is why we wanna do it, and why we hope to do it.
So one thing that would be great, Ken, if you or somebody on the committee can check, or I can ask Scott, whatever you want me to do, is to find out if this group is actually limited to 5, because that is much too small.
I can do that, I have the paperwork somewhere that.
Yeah. That is
Yeah.
really small.
Okay.
That's essentially the trust that's created to not get anything done, so.
Yeah.
So I don't know about whether that date's gonna, I mean, I'm not saying you guys shouldn't meet before then, I'm just saying I can't be back here until 8/21.
No, we've been meeting once a month, so that might be good, unless, I think we might discuss and say maybe we should meet beforehand, before that meeting, just so that we can
Yeah,
have stuff.
We have our homework done?
Yeah, so we can put together cheat sheets together.
well, except, actually, I don't want you to do that. I actually want you to think independently,
Okay.
so we can all look at them together.
That makes sense, so.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
might have
really,
something that we think about.
yeah,
Come here for a walk.
I mean, I can't.
No,
That's what I'm
no.
saying.
I'll check that date, and you're gonna get that, we have a Google, don't we have a Google Doc from
We do,
last
and I'm
week?
gonna put this, yeah, there were some resources I put in it for you.
Okay, all
So
right.
I will PDF this,
Okay,
and I'll put it there as well.
okay,
I
yeah.
apologize, I just didn't
That's
get it, all
okay, that's perfect, all right.
right?
Yeah, I don't really have much else, but as far as the historic aspects, we'll start working on at least getting them, on the macros list.
Yeah. Yeah,
You know,
that would be good things to do.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
Do you guys wanna call it a night, or do you wanna talk about something else real quick? Cause I think that Suzanne had mentioned it before, about the property up at,
You mentioned something?
yes, you did.
When you and I spoke.
The Griffin's property.
Oh.
Now, I brought some maps because I was on the Griffin's Dairy Committee. And I don't have the maps where I drew out the plans, but I do have a map of the Griffin's property right here, if you guys wanna come up and take a look at it.
Could I ask a favor, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sorry.
Could you recess for just 2 minutes?
Yes.
And maybe re-look at the table once Judy's done?
Yeah, but we're not gonna be long, because it's up to.
That's okay, yeah. I just want to be able to, if you're gonna talk about
That's
this.
fine, no, let's go ahead. Yep, recess, please. All right, we're gonna be back from recess. Thank you very much. Quickly, to this point, it's hot in here, we did lose a member, but thank you. Welcome, Suzanne. I know that our newest member had mentioned in passing about we were looking at Griffin's Dairy Farm, whatever they call it nowadays. You can tell this is an old, this was before they had JPEGs and stuff, so I took the cow on this, our recommendation back in 2004.
Wow.
So, I was on the Griffin's Dairy Committee, and our thoughts were, we didn't take any binding votes or recommendations, but we wanted to have a board of trustees, but it was the intention when it was purchased, and I don't know if you guys probably weren't even born in 2004, but I was at that town meeting, and I was on the finance committee. It was the intent, and actually Kevin Dunham was the one that got up and said, we can recoup some of the money we need to purchase the property by selling off a couple of lots. Of course, once the town bought it, that went on the wayside. They decided not to. Ironically, a few years after that, they had some struggles, and they came to a few members of the former Griffin's Dairy and said, hey, you know, now we're thinking about selling it, but that didn't happen. So, I'm just gonna show you guys this map real quick, and there's 305 feet here, which is on Patterson Street. Okay, now, currently, is a parking lot on part of it. Let's see if I can figure this out. So now there's a parking lot there.
Mhm.
So that, and I think,
There's one more.
right, so there's a Patterson, there's the gates to get in there to park. There's still a lot of land here on Patterson Street that could be possibly used, and if I remember correctly, they left a couple they were putting sewer in at the time, and they left a couple of stubs for sewer there for future development, if that was to happen. I don't know how that would fly, I'm just, maybe I should preface this by, well, I'll let Suzanne talk in a second, if that's all right. So there's possibility of lots there, and there is a kind of a quasi Christmas tree farm there. I I don't think that's the end of the world, they can always be moved, there's a couple of trees that we planted for Abington Celebrates. And also over here on Charles Street is 192 feet of undeveloped land the town owns, because they own, as you can see from this picture here, they own here. 191, I think it was 100-foot frontage was required, so it's just short. We had the possibility of probably putting 2 lots there, getting a variance, because it's only like less than 10 feet short. And well, it's property here at the end of that little circle that the town owns as Griffin's Dairy. So let me give you the ball now.
So.
I only brought this up because I heard that you were questioning.
Right, so I was questioning it because Griffin's Dairy, we want to keep open space. That's, you know, as a town, we do want to keep open space. But my question was more on Patterson, because years ago when they were going to build a senior center, that's where they wanted to build it. So they had to look if it had sewer, if they had the frontage to build a senior center. And at that point, I believe it was like 2006, the town decided that that wasn't a great area for them for a lot of reasons, and it was before my time. But there is room to have affordable housing there. And I just felt that that might be a better place. There's condos on the other side.
Yeah.
There's on Charles Street is a bunch of houses. It's a great little community to grow up. I know a lot of people grew up there, bought houses there, are now raising their children and their grandchildren there. So I thought that that might be something to talk about on there. I mean, especially if it's already plugged in for storage, where if it was another raw piece of land, it might not be for what we're looking for, as far as, you know, how many houses or I don't even know how many houses we're actually looking for. I'm not so sure of the ends of Charles Street. I'm not sure if that is available or it has storage. But this parking lot was made, there was discussion, because I was on Park and Rec years and years ago, that we were gonna make fields in Griffin's Dairy. And it just didn't work out with the new school. We had turf, we had fields available, but they made the parking lot. And you can't park there. It's always locked. So that's a little ridiculous on my end. If you can't park there, you end up parking off of Plymouth Street and walking through Griffin's Dairy, which is a great area. And if you put houses on that street on Patterson, it would never affect the walking area. It wouldn't take, I mean, we have 64 acres. It really isn't gonna be that intrusive to put houses there, in my opinion.
Okay, so now you're talking about, I'm not sure what you're talking about, a housing project, you're talking about just future.
Since I came into
senior-
this, yeah,
Right.
senior housing is very difficult because it's state-run. So I would never say something for senior housing, but affordable housing, I mean, it depends on what you think is affordable. Habitat for Humanity, there's a great little area right there for that.
That's what I was hoping
If
you would
you
say.
would, you know, if you wanted to do that project, because it's already, there's buildings on the other side, so you know you have sewerage, water, electric, you know, it's not a raw piece of land that you're putting on. There's a lot of things going on in that area, and it's close to everything.
I think it's a great spot.
And
That's
another
why-
Habitat house is right around the corner.
Yeah, right here on Charles Street.
So, yeah, so I mean, for me, it was a win-win. I mean, I just kind of, you know, talked about it, but that would be a great place for a couple of, you know, smaller, maybe a couple of ranches to put there.
Well, maybe they even talked about sort of doing like, not an apartment, but a
Oh, a
204,
duplex,
204, you know, duplex kind of
Yeah.
thing. That's what they had talked about doing. Yeah, they were very interested in that. They're very interested in Abington, and they have funds, you know, and they you know, they have a track record. We have 2 Habitat houses in Abington. I think this is great. Because
Yeah, and you don't want, you know, if you're gonna do a Habitat for Humanity, you don't want to have it on, you know, a stamp of land. You really wanna kind of give somebody, this is your opportunity, this is like, everybody, the community's coming together and have a little bit of land and a little bit of space. I don't know if I would go for the duplexes, if I would more apt to do houses. Duplexes are a little, a little
So
tough.
if you have three, if you would take over the parking lot that's already there.
Yeah.
You could have three, I think you require 100-foot frontage, so you have 304 feet, so you could do 3 lots here. If
Yeah.
you wanted to, or do 2 and leave it open so people can get in, so. There's the trail,
Right,
actually, this parking lot is attached to trails,
not really. I mean, there's a section where you can
Yeah.
go and you can,
but it's not the big trail.
but it's not, I mean, the trails are not paved, they're, stoned, stone dust on them, so it's not really that intrusive. And it's also, if I am correct, it's not a wetland area. You don't get into like the wetlands until you go further in. Because there's a little brook on this side off of Plymouth Street.
It's pretty dry there, I think.
And has room on the, so here's the parking lot, but there's space on either side of the parking lot. And then on the left-hand side, there's a house.
There's a house.
There's a little bit of space on the other side of that parking lot.
This is the, wait, look at the picture there, that shows where the parking lot is. So where are we?
Where Charles, here,
So there's the parking lot,
right.
right? And here is,
There's a house
It's a
here,
multi-family.
Yeah.
it is a multi.
but here, there's nothing.
No, there's whatever left over, but I think this goes basically right up against the fence of these people, not that little buffer there. So you probably still have a couple 100 feet, so you can probably, if you don't want to touch the parking lot, which if it's not being used for anything, I think
Well, it's not being used for
I think
anything.
it was
so
originally
it's-
designed because they were gonna have ball fields there.
They were gonna have ball fields and they were gonna do all this, and then, and quite honestly, because of the new school and it has, a lot of the sports came from, that were going down behind the Frollo, came back up to the high school. So the Frollo was, they had the ballparks, they, redid the dugouts for it, so, I just think it's a resource that was a little wasted. You're still having your open space, you're still having your recreation, you can do a lot here for the kids. And you can still have housing there. I just think it's a win-win, just my opinion.
It was my opinion back in, we did, because I thought there'd be 3 house lots there,
Yeah, and I think, now's the time for the big push. I mean, there was a lot of, opinions way back when, but I think, like as years go, we kind of evolve and say, this is what we want to do, and it just makes sense. I don't think you'll get a lot of pushback from people who say, oh, that'd be a great idea.
So how would we proceed? I'm all for Habitat for Humanity there. I don't know about anything else. I mean,
And we've met with her a few times.
I would, I'm coming into this really brand new, so I'm so sorry, but I'm using my realtor thing. I would actually try to contact someone that does Habitat for Humanity on a volunteer, like a contractor who volunteers his time. There's a lot of contractors that volunteer their time for it. And I don't know if Judy has a list of contacts, and just say, this is what we're looking at, and find out how many houses, if possible, that we could do. What is our next step?
See, they have an acquisition team that they had
Yeah.
looked at the property, because they were gonna go on that because the bank was perfect for that.
Okay.
I think we should bring her into the next meeting.
Mhm.
But ahead of that, here's my biggest concern, and these guys are gonna know the concern that I have is we start the ball rolling, tell Habitat, here's 200, maybe 300 feet, we do a couple house lots, possibility, and all of a sudden,
Who's got control of that property right now?
It's town owned.
how,
So is it under the select?
however.
Yeah, it is.
Then you're gonna, the Griffin Dairy Committee is probably gonna be against it. Okay, they're nice people and, and
Oh, they're very nice, but I mean, it's called, right now is you have to, I would spin it like, we're evolving, we're moving forward. You've blocked this property for a lot of years because it was a dairy, and it was, you're emotional. You wanted it emotionally. We're still keeping that. We're not taking anything away. You're talking about, not even 3 acres, and you have 64. And you're helping out community. That's what you want. You're helping out the community. you're helping out a family, or 4 families,
Yes.
or 10 families. That's how I would tell them. It's like, you are going to get pushback no matter what you do, because people don't like change. We're all humans, we all want our stuff. But, I think it's a good time. I think, you know, how the world is going this around, I think it's, people are a little bit more open about change, and especially with Griffin Dairy. And I think Mrs. Griffin would love that.
Yep.
I think she would be supportive.
So what do you guys think? We ask,
Noreen?
Mary Brown,
Mhm.
yeah, to come in. Do we tell her ahead of time? Do we meet with her and go down to the field and say, this is what we're talking about? You know, I have no problem with that, meeting her, say, if you're interested in this project, come look at it.
Do that. Can't all go though, because we have to post a meeting, right?
Well, we don't take any votes or anything, just say, here's the property.
I think it would be nice for her to look at it and really kind of envision, like, this is how, and then I would take her on the Plymouth side to say, this is community gardens.
Mhm.
So we are using it, this is community gardens, this is our walking path, we still wanna keep all our acreage, but we just want this minuscule little piece to do something wonderful with
I
it.
feel we're sitting in this room when we bring her in, and then all of a sudden we bring it before the selectmen, and whoa, wait a second, because people get their ear and say, it's a parking lot now.
But it's a parking lot that's not used and it's locked. I mean, honestly, I mean, there's no jabbing or shame to it, it's a parking lot that no one can use, it's locked, and it's not really being taken care of because it's locked.
Maybe we'll get the assessors map and bring it down there.
When I had contacted Noreen back in June about a totally different part of Habitat, and she did say that she would be interested in reviewing other parcels of land if any are available, and maybe a meeting with the assessor could be arranged. So that's what she said to me back then.
Yeah, and even before that, she asked for the list of town-owned property, and she was given Glenwood's Way and say, here you go.
Yeah.
That's how the problem.
Well, I think, you know, like, as a board, we can kind of choose, like, not choose, that's not a good word, but suggest, this is a good spot, that, in our opinion, and we're not, you know, contractors or, you know, assessors or anything, and we like this spot. And what is your opinion? You're in the game.
Yeah, ask Habitat, what do you think you could do with this?
Right.
That would create the most housing without overpopulating and would be an asset for the town.
Right.
I think it's awesome.
I also, speaking of Noreen, she had mentioned, how do we get the ball rolling on Plymouth Street? Is that something we should wait and discuss with her next month?
But why, is it for sale now?
Well, they wanted to, she said that they were interested in rehabbing that house and
Right.
possibly putting another house on that lot, but it's pretty small, so I don't know how that would work out.
Habitat was inherited the house basically, they bought it.
It's at the corner of Malvern and Plymouth Street. It was,
Had the tree down for the longest time.
yeah.
It was a vet, I think it
Oh,
was a senior veteran.
yes,
Yeah.
I know who, it was a
I think
senior.
they had a reverse mortgage and I think he
Yeah.
Yes.
was in the house.
Mhm.
And now Habitat, do they own it now or they?
I don't think so.
We can ask her, when we
Okay.
bring her in, we can ask her.
Okay.
To the status of that too, because that was one of the selling points when we get CPA funds saying we might need money at short notice. And what that would require is we give them money, say $200,000 to rehab the house. The person who's gonna get the Habitat Community House is gonna rehab it too, and they put in supplies. And then the person will get the house for market value, however it works.
Yeah.
But, then we'd end up having some affordable housing units, so. It might be,
So it would just be one house? I don't think it's room for
I
two.
don't think so either.
It would
Yeah,
be,
Because I think I looked it up and it's under a quarter of an acre.
yeah. I don't think there's room for it, because I knew the gentleman who used to live there.
Mm.
Great guy,
Mm.
great guy.
Or maybe we'd pay what they paid and then, I don't know exactly, the-
Find out from.
Yeah.
yeah, but we could ask her about that, so why don't we,
Defer it on the agenda for next time. and-
Did that date you-
Judy too.
did that date that Judy spoke about work for you guys?
Yes.
It was August 21st, was that what it was?
Mhm.
So Monday night, do you know if it's like gonna be that night?
No,
There's
we're
no
off
meeting
in August.
we usually try to meet, we did to accommodate the rep, is we would meet at 5:30. So that the hour before you guys can sit down, you can sit down here.
Yeah.
And not, also, we made Scott available, because, for a while, he was coming to all our meetings and giving us updates, so. Not much to update him now. All right, so, why don't we look at 821, I'll reach out to Noreen. In the meantime, is one of you folks able to get the assessors map of this property, and maybe,
Just go into the office.
is that what, you know, how it works?
Yeah, just
I
go
don't.
in the office, we asked
Because
for it.
Because that would have the plot lines, right? We're gonna get it outlined anyways, and just say, this is what we're talking about.
So assessors map of this, do you wanna do it, or I can do it? I don't care, okay.
It would just be off Patterson Street.
What about Plymouth Street?
Do you want to-
I would do the whole thing, because then you can actually see what's available, and then actually the continuance of, Charles Street at the end.
Yeah, because there's almost 2 house lots worth here, and there's a bunch here, this is kind of what here, I think, though.
So Charles and Bellows?
Charles and Patterson.
What about Bellows?
I think with Bellows too, I think it's, there is small houses there, I think this would be better, I think people would be more
Yeah.
adapt
Yep.
to put it on this and not use
Yep.
I think Bellows is beautiful outside, like
It's
people
an already established neighborhood. And
yeah, and if you
everything.
looked in there, and you would have to put a road, you know what I mean, like,
You have
it's,
to add to the road, yes.
you would have to add to it, and I just think it would be not cost effective to do that, because I don't even know if it's set up for storage if you continue, so I just think it would be better with Charles and what is it?
Patterson.
Patterson, I wanted to say Bellows.
So I'm getting an assessor's map of the entire Griffin's Dairy property and, the end of Charles Street.
Charles,
Yeah.
which is part of Griffin's Dairy. Yeah. So that's good, yeah, so. All right, and then we'll ask her, I'll put a plug in her ear,
Okay.
and then just say, keep this date open, we might have a possibility. And then once we get this map, if you wanna get it to me or something, or you could even fold.
Okay. Do they have, can they send it electronically,
Or you can scan it. Or, and if you're available, I'll say, if you wanna come down and look at it with your team, let us know, because you guys, I'm not sure what your status, but you guys are open during the day, you can just meet her there and say, this is what we're talking about.
Mhm.
You know. And she might wanna come with her acquisition team and say, here's the property, what do you guys think would be the biggest bang for the buck, I guess. I'm not sure what a development, so to speak, but maybe, a couple houses, a couple duplexes or whatever. It wouldn't be out of place here, because this is a big old house with a couple of apartments in it.
I think it might be a 4-family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you showing it, maybe the
All right. Anything else we want to talk about tonight? We already have our next meeting date. Discussion of affordable housing webinar attended by residents, by members. Some of you guys saw that online, right?
Yeah, we did I did the first one, but I have not watched the second one yet. That was the link that I sent to you, so
Yeah.
you could send everybody else.
Yeah. All right.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All right, we're done.